Thank you. Thank you all for joining us on this rainy Wednesday evening. For anyone that doesn't know, I'm Chris Potter. I'm the regional editor of the Hornell Evening Tribune. We were asked to moderate this debate, and we were happy to do so. This is a historic election in Hornell as Mayor Hogan steps aside after 32 years of service to the city. And this election comes at an exciting time in Hornell's history. Industry is booming, construction projects are underway across the city, and new businesses are opening every day. The mayor's office will be pivotal in capitalizing on this momentum the next few years. And with us tonight, we have, starting on the end, John Lewis from the Together Now Party, Republican John Buckley, and Joe Duffy of the Green Party. Our moderators are Evening Tribune City Editor Neil Simon and newswriter Jason Jordan. A few rules before I turn the table over to them. They're going to ask our questions tonight. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for each response tonight. After each round of answers, we'll offer the chance for a rebuttal of 90 seconds. And we're going to get started here with opening statements from each candidate of about 3 minutes, starting with Joe Duffy.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you, Hornell Golf Club, for having this debate here today. Thank you for Hornell Evening Tribune for moderating this, and thank you, John Lewis, for setting it up, really, and Elizabeth Benedict for pushing it. It's pretty good. So I want to say go Raiders because we have such a tremendous football team. But, you know, I also want to say go Hornell Senior High School because they earned a silver medal from the U.S. News and World Report magazine. This was for the best high schools, okay? So they ranked 191 out of 1270 in New York State. But they also ranked 2,409 out of 20,487 high schools across the United States. You know, so I believe that each and every person is important, that all people should be treated fairly and kindly, that we should accept one another and keep on learning together. I believe each person must be free to search for what is true and right in life, that all persons should have a vote about the things that concern them. I believe in working for a peaceful, fair, and free world. I believe in caring for our planet Earth, the home we share with all living things. Okay. I also believe in term limits. It eliminates career politicians, it promotes new ideas, and it fights corruption, cronyism, and nepotism. I also believe in campaign finance laws. The Supreme Court I'm disappointed in. In fact, it happened like in the 1800s where they made a corporation a person. All right. So this corporation had the right to vote before the women did by 70 years. That's pretty bad on our part. Okay. Also, campaign finance laws, they made another decision that money is free speech. You've got the Koch brothers who are billionaires. And if you haven't read the articles about them, how they buy elections, putting people in that they want in place. So I'm ending this, but I want to say go Bills too, because I think this is the year.
Thanks. John Lewis.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm glad everyone is here in this room tonight, in all honesty. My name's John Lewis. I am currently the manager at WLEA and WCKR Radio, collectively PMJ Communications. I have been in that role just shy of 2 years now, managing a staff of 10. And also, previously, I spent 10 years at Alfred University as not only an admissions counselor, but later an assistant director of admissions, seeing a staff of 40 tour guides. at the university. Right now at the radio station, I manage the budget, I manage personnel issues, the day-to-day, all that happens on air, and amongst a number of different things. I am a graduate of Alfred University and Alfred State College. I love Hornell. I'm a graduate of Hornell High School and St. Anne's School, where I was an altar boy. A lot of fun stuff there, goes way back. But again, thrilled that we're all in this room tonight, in all honesty, and can't wait to see what we're going to hear.
Thanks, John. John needs a sign.
Thanks, Mike. Well, thanks everyone for coming tonight. Thank you, Evening Tribune, for hosting and for moderating. Thank you, candidates, for being here. I think everyone knows who I am. I've been the deputy mayor the last 4 years, been on the council for 8. Prior to that, I served on the zoning board. Instead of using my opening remarks to talk about myself, I just want to express my deep sadness and deep disappointment for the way this campaign has really turned negative over the last few days. And what I'm talking about is John Lewis here really going to the personal attacks on Facebook. John, I've known you for quite a while. I've always liked you and respected you. That's not you. That's really below the belt. Some of the things that you've said, I'll take my lumps for whatever votes I've had in the past, and that's fine and dandy. I'm a big boy, I can take that. But when you go personal and you insult my integrity the way you did, that is beneath you. That is not the John Lewis I know, and that's not the John Lewis I hope you are.
Is this what we came here for? We came here to talk.
Ma'am, you're not running the debate. Please sit down.
Excuse, she's got to
be on record. You can continue. He has 3 minutes to make an opening statement. They can say whatever they would like.
The below the belt stuff is just beneath you, and I just wanted to express that. The accusations, the innuendo, there's no place for that in Hornell. This is not Washington. This is not Albany. We are Hornell. Whether it's the city, the village, Canasteel, Arkport, we're all one big community here. There is no need for character assassination or Washington-style politics here in the city. I expect better from you. I look forward to this debate for a couple different reasons. Number one, I want to hear your ideas. I want to hear from you. I want to hear from Joe. Joe's been around the block a few times. I have a lot of respect for Joe. He's run for office a few times in the past. And I know what it takes to get out there and knock on those doors and have those conversations. I didn't need candidate training. I didn't need a campaign manager. Some people think Jessica Cleve was my campaign manager. I don't have a campaign manager, folks. I don't need a campaign manager or some kind of candidate training to knock on your door and have an open and honest dialogue and conversation with you. I've done it the old-fashioned way. I climbed my way up. I started on the zoning board after attending common council meetings for a number of years. Served 8 years on the council. I've held over 20 town halls in that time, many of which you've attended. 4 years ago, Sean Hogan appointed me deputy mayor. He could appoint anyone. He chose me. And then he chose me a second time. And the council confirmed me unanimously both times. I love public service. Politics can be blood sport. I get that. It can be dirty.
For about 3 minutes, John. You're going to take a second to finish up.
Yeah,
I mean, what, you got it?
Yep,
you all set?
But let's get started.
Just to explore a little bit on those opening statements, we'll go to a different first question. And everyone's going to we're going to take turns going first. Joe went first there. John Lewis will go first on this question, and so forth. But John Lewis, can you talk about the kind of what has been important for you to accomplish in this campaign? How have you tried to run your campaign? What did you think was the best way to reach the citizens of Hornell? And We have 2 minutes to answer, and we also have 90 seconds if anyone wants to rebut.
Can we rebut the welcomes? But, no. I just joined the campaign, joined the race at the beginning of July, and it's been nonstop since then. Every day. Tried to stay away from Sundays, but we had to do it because we felt like we were behind from the get-go. So every day we have been on foot. We've been knocking on doors. It's been amazing, in all honesty. The main reason, I told John, he was the first one to get in the race, I told him at the 4th of July parade, it wasn't that I thought you would do a bad job and that I didn't like you at all. My objective was that I want the same job, and all three of us do here tonight. And that is why I got in this race. I knew I would regret it if I did not. And in all honesty, we've worked really hard, and it's made me want it even more, day to day. I am Hornell. I love Hornell. I always have. I've never left. Even when I did work at Alfred, I lived right where I do now. I live next door to the house that I grew up in, right next door to my parents who are here tonight. So the love has grown and grown and grown. And just hearing from people are ready for change, people are ready for a fresh set of eyes. And I believe I can bring that for Hornell and to Hornell. So thank you.
We had planned on, we had a plan for what we were told were going to be 2 candidates. Now we have 3. Could we not applaud every answer so we can get as many questions in as we can? Joe or John? Yes, if you'd like to. Or Joe, can you talk about your philosophy?
Oh yeah, the philosophy is...
and how you've campaigned.
Sure, the philosophy is to get out to every house in Hornell. And I thought the philosophy would be one of these flyers. I didn't get a chance to talk to everybody at the door. But I did get an earful from quite a few people, and concerning a lot of areas, and you were talking about abandoned houses and houses across the street, and also traffic along the way, like why is that kid going in that car 20 feet and then getting out of the car? I mean, what's going on there? So, it is a neighborhood watch, and we watch out for each other. And that's, I gotta admit, the police department's been doing a great job, and you're getting these things going. So if you go door to door, a lot of times they don't want to talk to you. They'll just, in fact, you can even see the door close when you start approaching them. But after they say hello, it's fine. In fact, the first one I went to one of John Buckley's yard signs, and the woman says, "Oh no, get out of here." And then she smiled and says, "Oh, wait a minute.
I'll talk to her."
Yeah. And then she came over and she said, "Hey, wait a minute. We want to give equal time to all the candidates, and I want to hear your ideas." So there's a lot of ideas on this flyer here. There's one in the back there. And even if I don't get elected, and these guys do, maybe some of these ideas they'll be able to use. But it's really out there getting hand-to-hand with people in every ward. And we've got 10 wards. So.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
Yeah, just to build on what Joe said, it is difficult to get out there and see everyone. It's almost impossible to knock on every door and reach every person. A lot of people are busy. Some people are never home. You try your best to get back. But, I've been doing this for a while. I remember the first time I ran for council, knocking on those doors, and the first couple of times, it's a little hard because you don't know what you're getting yourself into. But I can say I've made so many lifelong friends doing that, not just in the 9th Ward in prior years, but this year and across the city. It's just amazing. You hear different stories. Some of the concerns you hear, maybe citywide issues. Other times they're unique to that neighborhood. It might be the curb. It might be the street. It might be the abandoned house across the street or next door. Things that they have to live with in their neighborhoods. But part of what I've done over the years, in addition to those town halls, I just had the citywide porch tour. And it's more, the porch tours I set out to do 10 of them. I wanted to do 1 in each ward. Turned out to be a handful more. I had some people requesting to do them, so I had some overlap in some of the wards. And some of the things that I heard there, I take those back to the city the different departments, through the codes department, maybe to the police department or fire. It just depends what it is, DPW in many cases. So the information that, when I'm out talking to people, whether it's door to door, the porch tours at the town halls, I take that information back to the city hall and share that with the appropriate folks so we can address those issues. And that's what I've done over the last 8 years. And that's what we'll continue to do. Thank you.
New question. John Buckley goes first on this one. We often hear the term zombie properties in the city. Renters sometimes receive a negative stereotype. How can the city encourage more responsible renters? And if you are serious about encouraging more responsible renters, could you please give specifics, policies to support responsible renters?
Well, some renters do get a bad rap, and there's no doubt about that. If you look at the housing stock in Hornell, the average housing stock, the age of it is over 100 years old. We've had many single dwelling houses that have been converted over to apartments over the years. We'd like to try to reverse that trend. We do have a lot of renters. Roughly 42, 43% of the housing stock is rental property, which in my estimation, that's too much. I'd rather see those single family homes, many of them. But what can we do for the renters? First of all, don't demonize everyone. There are some bad ones out there that don't take care of their property. My wife and I, before we were married, we rented for a period of time. Actually, when we were married, we rented. We took care of our property. We planted flowers and did things like that. And you hope that things like that are contagious. You referenced zombie properties. I put out an initiative a few months ago. Taking Pride in Your Community has a recognition component to that, and that is for folks that go above and beyond decorating, beautification, restoring a house. Maybe it's an old dilapidated house that you live next door to, you thought ought to have been torn down. Someone comes in, restores it, new roof, new siding, all of a sudden it revitalizes the neighborhood. People like that ought to be recognized for what they do and have some sort of recognition from the city. Some of you know the story. Arlene Dennis has that nice flower bed along 36. John, you see it every time you drive home. I was just walking by her house one day, and I didn't know Mrs. Dennis. Just literally walking by her house one day, and I just stopped dead in my tracks, knocked on her door, and said, "Thank you. Thank you for doing this all these years." And she said, Mr. Buckley, that's the first time ever in all these years anyone from City Hall has said thank you. And that stuck with me, and that was the inspiration behind that recognition component. But the zombie properties, yeah, that's a big problem. I work with codes all the time. Have for years. We'll continue to do that. We've got the land bank, thanks to our Attorney General. We'll be utilizing that in the future and other tools as well.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Perfect. 90 seconds. Anyone want to talk about specific proposals to reward renters or help them along?
Well, let's go back. I mean, you're talking almost 50% of the population in Hornell are renters. All right. Now, some of these places, like you were talking, dual apartments. I mean, I'd hate to see what your water bill would be like if you don't have these renters and these dual apartments, because every apartment pays a water bill. Every apartment pays a garbage bill. All right, whether they're occupied or not occupied. Also, the other factor is the landlord does have a responsibility. And the first thing I do, and I'm a landlord, I go to the police. And the first thing I ask them is, do you recognize this name? I don't ask them for a background check right off the bat, but I ask them, do you recognize the name? And usually they recognize names. And then the person usually gives me permission for a background check. And then there's a determination of whether I rent it to them or not. Okay? So some of the other stuff, though, you got this home ownership protection program, HOP, that's in effect for foreclosures. I mean, there are people, for some reason or other, cannot afford their mortgage. And they lose it all. And they walk away. But I see the program's been put into place here through Hornell, John and Councilman.
About 10 seconds.
That they have a program they can go to with Arbor and discuss how they can stop the foreclosure and possibly hold on to the ownership of the property.
Thank you very much. John Mose?
Absolutely. Thank you.
The zombie properties, I mean, in a perfect world, they wouldn't even be here. And unfortunately, those are people that have moved on and kind of left something that unfortunately is ready to be torn down a lot of times. In a perfect world, maybe those could get torn down. It costs money to do that. And with the months that we've been doing this, looking into things, more specifically, a lot of these zombie properties are owned by banks that aren't even local. We've got to reach out. Codes reaches out. The city reaches out. We'll continue to do that if I'm there. Maybe even more so. Especially at the beginning, everybody's probably going to be ready to hit the ground running and just bust out of the gate to do a lot of things that we'd love to do. The initiatives I would put in place as well, let those neighbors take over that property. If it's a neighbor on each side, they could split the land. If one wants that and the other does not, they get the first shot and then let it go on to someone else from there. Another thing really quick, because I know I only have 90 seconds, I live right by St. James Hospital. Pretty soon that's going to be vacant. That could be a place for renters, I'm a former renter myself. My father owned rental properties in Hornell. I don't look down on renters at all, and I think we can build more, especially Dream World above Main Street shops, similar to Market Street in Corning.
That's 90. You have no more time. And perfect. Thank you.
Great.
Jason?
Alrighty, thank you, gentlemen, and in the interest of moving things along and getting everybody home in time for the World Series, we're going to move right into the third question. The city runs on a tight budget every year, especially if you intend to come in under the tax cap that the state has implemented. If you had enough money to shift around and fund one more full-time position, what city department do you hire in?
That's
for Mr. Duffy.
We live on grants, okay? We need a grant person who could work full-time. If we could work them 24 hours a day, that's what we need. That's your water filtration, that's your sewer lines, federal, community, economic grants. Those things are all there for a community, every community in the state. So I would hire a grant person to make the application go through. And you do, I mean, that's what we survive on. We definitely survive on, especially a small community. We're in a roller coaster, okay? We're in the top of the roller coaster right now with jobs coming in through Ulster. And I see the partnership just like with Concern for Youth. I see they just did a grant with Concern for Youth. And they're showing that they're a good partnership with everybody. And I think that's a very good place to start with the young people who are here today. So.
Okay, Mr. Lewis, would you like to rebut?
Yes. Will you refresh me on the question again? Because I'm going to go a little different if we...
Yes, the city runs on a tight budget. If you have enough money to hire one full-time position in city government, what department would you hire in?
Great, thank you. I just wanted for you to say that again, because right away, I can be honest, at the radio station, I do a lot of different tasks, including HR. If, from my understanding, HR is something that does not exist currently within City Hall. And that would probably, if there was money, which I know right now there isn't, but let's say people are retiring, I feel like the American dream right now, what's happening is more people are taking on additional responsibilities and people aren't getting hired into some positions. But right away, HR could be that person, one person to start. Maybe it grows in the future, but an HR representative who could help with negotiating with the unions from day to day, who could be in a room with the mayor.
All right, and Mr. Buckley.
Well, if you ask the city departments, they'd all put their hand up, but we actually have fewer city employees now than we did 10, 20 years ago. We do run on a tight budget, but to address the question, codes. We just talked about it. We just finished talking about it. The codes department is vastly understaffed. We basically have 3 people in codes. We have 1 in the office and 2 out in the field. They are stretched. I'm the 9th Ward Alderman in addition to being the Deputy Mayor, and I'm not exaggerating when I say I could keep the codes department busy just in the 9th Ward of the city. all day long, every week. And that's how strapped they are. I mean, they do an amazing job for what they have. They don't have enough manpower. The zombie properties, the vacant properties. And I'll give you an example. When a resident calls in their neighbor for a dog defecating in the yard, codes has to go and respond to that. They're chasing down their dog feces. That's the thing they have to deal with. I've actually gone out on rides with codes and spent time with them. And some of the things they spend their time on, you probably, to you guys, you probably be scratching your heads. To address Joe, he mentioned HR, John, I'm sorry, you mentioned HR. That's true, we do need to address that. But I think, just from an efficient standpoint, we could cross-train someone that already works in City Hall and have them take that over and really get that going. But that does need to be addressed.
90 seconds, thanks.
Okay, and the next question is from Mr. Lewis. I cover the city council meetings every month. I have not seen you present every month. I've covered those meetings every month for the last 3 years. And why should people believe that you have the intellectual curiosity to run the city when you haven't attended those meetings?
Sure, great question, fair question as well. Again, we announced in July, and I have been at those common council meetings as much as I could. Not everyone, I was not able to attend each one. So there is an interest, and I would say my curiosity was piqued upon my new position at WLEA. I would say years ago, I would be more interested in watching a sports game like the World Series than paying attention to the news, what was happening locally. And I definitely grew up in those past few years. And in these last 2 years, I've grown up a hell of a lot. And it was time. Hearing on WLEA every day, local news on the half an hour, talking with the mayor, filling in for Brian O'Neill, and working with reporters that are in the room tonight, we couldn't escape it. I'm listening 8 to 10 hours a day at work to WLEA, and my interest exploded. And that's what I do, is spend most of my evenings when not at work, I will say researching, but really reading articles, more than books, but staying abreast of what's happening locally and nationally.
Alrighty, and Mr. Buckley, you're required to be at these meetings, so if you could sort of harken back to your time before you were on the council, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, yeah, just going back in time, I attended common council meetings for quite a long time. And I remember, this is over a decade ago. And one night after the meeting was over, Sean Hogan pulled me aside and said, "Hey, you've been coming to these meetings. There's an opening on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Absolutely." And so I served on the Zoning Board of Appeals for a period of 3 years. And in my estimate, I did it the old-fashioned way. I climbed the rungs of the ladder. You get on one of the boards and you learn a lot. Open meetings laws. You go to training, and then after 3 years, I ran for council. And all the while I was on the zoning board, I still attended council meetings. My opponent, John Lewis, to my county's been, 2 meetings? 2 meetings I've seen you at. If you're going for the top job, I would think you would spend a heck of a lot more time at common council meetings and some of the committee meetings. I've seen you at exactly 2, John. Joe, to Joe's credit, I've seen Joe at meetings off and on over the years. Joe's been very active, and I give him credit for that. But to answer your question, it's important to go to these meetings, to have that working knowledge of how a meeting is run, to have that working knowledge how the city departments are run. That's very important. Again, you can't underestimate, you can't underscore enough the importance of attending these meetings, and not just the meetings themselves, but the committee meetings, because a lot of the time things happen in the committees. And if you go to the Common Council, it might not get discussed in depth as much as it does in a law and ordinance committee or
we're at 90 seconds.
Or different committees like that.
Okay, and Mr. Duffy, if you'd like to rebut, where does your intellectual curiosity about city government come from, and if you could outline your activity?
Well, it's like John says. I mean, I've been to quite a few council meetings, and I'm telling you that Hornell's council meetings are very efficient. They move right along, they decide on subjects, and I gotta admit, probably in the subcommittees, there are more discussions about it that the public doesn't see and why it's been doing that way. I often wondered how they could get through a whole council meeting in less than an hour. I mean, if you have subjects to go over and public input, then I'd like to see more public input. I'd like to see people who come to the council meeting, and maybe that's one of the things. And the other factor is, you know, the wards, all your aldermen and alderwomen, they should invite people to the council meeting and say, come on, let's go to the council meeting. I mean, this concerns you. This concerns you, and possibly more people would come. I've got one of these things we call Lumia. It's on the computer, and what it does is you communicate through the computer. You can discuss things, respond to it, and put your own input on it. The Green Party uses that right now. They're called planks. And once you start getting people interested in a subject, then you can get them to the actual meeting and say, hey, because a lot of people just like their votes. They say, my vote doesn't count. Why should I go to the council meeting? I didn't even get to talk, and they were only there 25 minutes, you know. And I don't think we talk to our aldermen and the alderwomen enough, because that's your representative. That's the person you need to go to set up all the complaints and all the good things about the neighborhood.
Alrighty, the next question for Mr. Buckley. This is a reader question, and they want to know what your position is on residency requirements for city employees.
I think it's a good thing. I think having our employees live in the city, they give back to the city. They keep their tax dollars local. They take care of their homes. They take care of their properties. I know it's not popular with the police department, and I met with the police union back in the spring, and that was the big bone of contention there. And I understand that. I see it from both sides. But from my view, if you were to allow the police department to move out of the city, you'd have to do that for everyone. You can't just pick and choose. Overall, I think it's a great thing. If you're living in the city, you're spending your dollars here, you're shopping here, you're going out to dinner here. And honestly, from a public safety standpoint, the response time, the firemen or the police department, if something happens, we've had some incidences lately. We've had a couple of fires. Having those guys here local, because if they're not on duty and they get called in, that response time is going to be cut down drastically, which helps with public safety. Police, fire, codes, they all work together. So it's very important. As mayor, if elected, I plan to keep that residency requirement in place.
Okay, and Mr. Lewis, your rebuttal if you wish.
Great. I also would keep that intact. And when I met with the police department as well, we did speak about that. And it does, right away, it keeps those tax dollars in Hornell, the taxpayers who are funding these positions. And I'll tell you, my father was a career firefighter. Again, he's here tonight, but what was that? Sorry. But yes, keeping those tax dollars in Hornell, and also being good neighbors with one another. When you see the police department on your street, my neighbor is a police officer as well, and the one before that was as well. It helps me feel safe at night. And also the last thing about that too is, in my meeting with the police department, we talked about a disconnect that they do feel with the community, in things like even the dunk tank that was this summer for First Responders Day. That was something that they enjoyed, and things like that could continue. Something that we had talked about at the radio station was hosting a dance at the YMCA through Fund 92.1, and having it be for the youth, whether it be junior high, senior high, separating them, letting them do that together. I understand that used to be called the foxhole. So something like a foxhole dance, where we had talked with the police department and Rob, the director at the YMCA, Rob Gilchrist, to have the police department chaperone that.
Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Duffy, your rebuttal on the topic of residency requirements for city employees.
There's certain things we don't hear about. In order for a policeman, to do his job, he has to arrest people. He has to get people, put them in jail. There's been some incidents where these people have found out in the city where they live, and they've confronted these police in their homes and their families. So there are circumstances. I I agree with you, we should have our people in the city, but when you hear about these incidents that happen, you say, wait a minute, how can they protect themselves in their own neighborhood if they're isolated like that and somebody knows where they live? And this is there's not this community, it's all over the community. And it made a lot of sense to me. So would I make an exception? Yeah, for safety.
Thanks a lot.
Can I rebut that?
No, we're going to go on to the next question. We do have time, I think, for closing statements at the end, and I wanted to go to another reader question. We want to get another one in, and I'll just read it how they submitted it. I think, Joe, I think you go first here, but it'd be nice if everybody can answer it. This is what they said, and their perception is that for the past few years, attendance at summer recreation programs at the city playgrounds has decreased. Park attendants are hired to be at the playgrounds each weekday to provide activities for children. With drug use among school-age children rising, this person says, what would you do to increase attendance at the playgrounds? How would you make these programs more accessible and, they say, more fun, attract more people? So,
well, I tell you, the first thing I do is ask them to get rid of their iPhones and iPods and get rid of their cell phones and go out and play baseball. And then compete with each other. I mean, that's what we did with the playgrounds. We competed with each other in the whole system, in all of Hornell. I know it would be hard for them to understand because they're millennials, you know. But you know, the programs that they need, they have to initiate them. Just like our skate park. Maybe they can have a tournament at the skate park. Maybe they can have a climbing mountain like this chimney here, you know? You know, everybody likes to climb, you know? We have to refresh things for them. And one of the refreshing things is get on your bicycle, right? I see them, they all do scooters. They all do, so they're out there doing something. But maybe they need more direction. Like Concern from Youth. And maybe we could get another director, Concern for Youth, to get more youthful activities going on.
okay. John Lewis, John Buckley, John Lewis, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. One of the big things, and from the get-go, I had talked about an ice skating rink in Hornell. And at first I said I hope I wouldn't get laughed at, because on the television show Parks and Rec, Icetown bankrupted the city. And we don't want to do that, and this is where it kind of comes back to grants. We had talked about that earlier. With grants, you know, we're always going to be looking for things like that, and it goes to, you know, recreational things for young people to do that keep them away from drugs, keep them going out, doing things like Joe says, getting off of our phones, which is so easy to do. It was hard to get mine up before I walked up here tonight. Getting the youth more involved, giving them things like, whether it be ice skating, and maybe we'll end up with teams. And side note, from my time at Alfred University always wanted an arena, and there's no space to build it in Alfred. And Alfred State College, they wanted teams. So it could expand out. We could be making money off of that. But also going on to things I've mentioned before on my platform, pickleball courts and extracurricular activities all around. Just like the band that I'm in and have been since I was a kid, that kept me away from drugs, kept me away from alcohol, and just give people things to do here, similar to the revitalization at Shawmut Park, the bike path. We're going in a great direction.
Okay, you done?
Well, you know, getting back to the original question, which Joe was answering, you know, how do we do things differently at the parks, and you know, what kind of programs do we come up with? I think that's a great thing for the Parks and Recreation Committee to take up. As a subcommittee of the council, you know, get together, brainstorm, have some kind of events. You know, make it special. So something to attract the kids there. You know, maybe get away from the traditional things. And Joe, you're right. Put down the cell phones and the iPads and all that stuff. You know, pay more attention to the kids. But I want to address the ice rink, John, and I guess just a matter of clarification. Are you advocating for you know, an indoor hockey rink type thing with the refrigeration and all that?
Are we allowed to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, in all honesty, it could be as simple as what we did have at the park when I was a teenager, just the fire department watering it down, which I know that no longer works, but something that had a cover, because when we used to skate at first snow, that was it. No one was, I mean, we were shoveling it ourselves. But the more grant money we could get, the bigger it could get. Certainly nothing as big
If you want
as
you're only down to about 30 seconds.
Well, I just want to say, you know, it sounds like a great idea, and I'm always open to ideas that are going to help the community. But you know, something like that, will Alfred build it? Will it be grant money? And after it's built, who will maintain it? Who will take care of those costs? Just to juxtapose, you know, an ice rink, which I would imagine you'd want to open year round. That's, you know, requires refrigeration and people on staff. The city swimming pool, which is open only for a period of time during the summer, that costs the city $70,000, and that's just for the summer. So imagine what an ice rink would cost. So we have to always take care, you know, take care of the taxpayers and the effect that has on their wallets. Take that into consideration.
Next question is for John Lewis. Goes first. I guess I'll go with another reader question. This reader says, I think we can agree that the city is a business. I would like to know why you feel that you have the knowledge and the patience to run a business as our Maple City heads towards a new beginning following Mayor Hogan's tenure. So pretty open-ended. And
yeah, and I like that. Again, that's my background right now. You know, as limited as 2 years can seem to some, I became the general manager at WLEA after the passing of Kevin Doran, so I didn't have that mentor in that position to say, this is how I've done things. There was no one like a Sean Hogan who will continue to be around, hopefully, you know, in some aspect, one form or the other, to call, to talk to. That is what I do, again, day in and day out. And something I didn't really even think about when I took the job at the radio station is it's 2 radio stations, 24/7. So in this role, it would be similar. There are no breaks. You know, I would expect calls at nighttime, 7 days a week. There's no 9 to 5 that I do now. I've had 10 vacation days in the 2 years, and lucky to get that. But I would be managing that budget, working with the Common Council and working with committees, obviously, but that's something that I'm an expert at, squeezing every penny. On the microcosm scale, I know we're talking about a $7 to $9 million budget as opposed to the, I won't reveal the budget that we have, I guess, but you know, it's a fraction of that, but still, bringing that into personnel, and I know, boy, with time, I could get into Sean Hogan. I'm sure when he started, he had 0 experience as well in that role. And you know, with Sean being in this position 32 years, you know, I can't imagine any of us are going to be in this position for another 32 years. This could be a 4-year gig. It could be an 8-year gig. I would think at most 12 years. So we've got to think about that. And when we're connecting with politicians, great. But any of them can get elected out of office next year, 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years from now as well. So I would focus more on the business, as you say, than the political side of things from the get-go. Getting boots on the ground and running right away.
That's 2 minutes.
Just a reminder that rebuttals are optional, but Mr. Duffy, if you would like to on that question, be our guest.
You remember the question?
It's about expenditures and,
I forgot it for a second.
well,
It's okay.
operating companies. And you're talking about budgets. You know, how to save, how to conserve, how to keep that department running. What do you do next? Who unfortunately, who do we drop? So I've got a little experience in it. I've managed a couple short line railroad companies that we had a budget. We had to put out a budget every January 1st, and it had to be up to snuff. I mean, otherwise the main company wouldn't allow you to do it. So that's the whole point of the whole thing. Everything is concerning money. We need to find out how we can conserve money, how can we reuse money, how can we use the people that we have, like we were talking, multitaskers, just like our firemen, they're multitaskers, you know, and so City Hall needs to be multitaskers. The companies I worked with, they were all multitaskers. They had to do 2 or 3 jobs. So, yeah, we need to conserve and find out where we can help the people of Hornell and keep us solvent.
Thank you.
And Mr. Buckley.
Yeah, the city budget is actually about $13 million, and I sit on the finance committee for the city, and we've done a good job in partnership with Mayor Hogan delivering good budgets. You don't really see wild swings in the city budget as far as tax increases, and you always have to be cognizant because it's not the city's money, it's your money that we're spending. Whether it's for a piece of equipment or personnel services or what have you. But I've been on the finance committee for a number of years, and I've worked closely with other members as well as the mayor when it comes budget time. And some of those preliminary meetings, can be an eye opener because we're really dependent on state aid. We basically have three revenue streams. The main ones, the grants play a part of that, but we have state aid, we have money raised by taxes, and then we have the sales tax revenues. And so there's not a whole lot of wiggle room there, and you have to really be conscious of that, especially when it comes to when things come up. And plus we always have to deal with the state tax cap. And the state tax cap, the state doesn't abide by the same rules as we do. Capital projects, expiring pilots don't affect the state. It does affect the city. In fact, the year before last, we had a 0% tax increase. No tax increase, but yeah, we had to override the state tax cap because we were over it.
Okay, moving on to the next question. This one's from Mr. Duffy first. Should increasing home ownership be a goal of city government? And if so, what steps should the city take to encourage that? We've sort of heard about this in lofty terms. Hornell's always trying to attract a more younger demographic, especially first-time homeowners. Do you think the city should have a role in encouraging that?
Oh, definitely. Just like we were talking about the beautification program. I mean, there's many citizens in Hornell. Their yards are beautiful. I mean, they're just beautiful, and it's getting almost like Ithaca. If you go to Ithaca, you'll see they have their gardens out in front of their house instead of out in the back of the house. And to ownership on such things like that, yeah, you have to have a nice street. I was talking about litter the other day with somebody. If you go to Toronto, Canada, you don't see litter. Okay, it's so clean up there, it's unbelievable, and it registers in your eyes. So clean neighborhoods like we were talking, and some of these zombie houses, and I was just thinking about the other day, Habitat Humanity, why can't we can get into these houses? Habitat Humanity, they build houses for people to live in, okay? And I would love to see something like that happen, where the people can afford the houses. I mean, you're seeing the house prices go up and up. But you're seeing an increase now with Alstom here. Hopefully that will increase people's more interest in it now and bring more younger people here to do something, to live here. And like I said, the schools are wonderful here. So, thanks.
Okay. Mr. Buckley, on encouraging first-time home ownership in the city.
Yeah, we should always do what we can to encourage, whether it's first-time home ownership or second or third, we should always try to get people into homes as opposed to renting. Again, nothing wrong with renting, but I think when you own your own home, you take more pride in it. And when you take more pride in it, you're going to do more things that benefit the community, the neighborhood. Whether it's decorative, flowers. And I always like to think, when a neighbor's doing something and you live next door, and you kind of look over, it's like, maybe I should step my game up. Maybe I should plant some flowers. And I always hope that things like that are contagious. Joe talked about downtown a little bit. If you look at downtown, over the last 30 years, we've had this kind of immigration to the strip plazas and that sort of thing, and downtown was kind of we were just left picking up the pieces. I think we've done a good job. We're going in the right direction. I think the gravity in the future is heading downtown. We've had some success stories. You look at downtown, we've got the Brute and some other nice businesses to attract a younger generation. If you look above the first floors of downtown, that's where the opportunity is. We have a lot of empty space in those buildings, and our job is to really, as community leaders, as elected officials, is to really partner with those building owners and try to incentivize them through loans or state grants. And Federation Building's a perfect example of that. To really get those buildings in use, apartments. I think people want to be downtown. The center of gravity is definitely headed that way.
Okay, Mr. Lewis, on encouraging first-time home ownership in the city of Hornell.
Yes, it's a toss-up because houses are great. I have a dog. The yard is awesome. But on the other hand, I would love to have a loft apartment similar to the Federation building, and it would be great to have them above Main Street. Absolutely. I think that's similar to the comment I made earlier of Market Street. It's a gem when you walk there. That would be great. Similar to what I saw in Saratoga not long ago either. Places on Main Street like Barnes & Noble as well. Like, I'm sure that wouldn't be viable here in Hornell necessarily, even though there is one at Alfred University. So you never know. But bringing kind of some of those maybe minor chains rather than like, what you might see in a mall to the area as well. And that attracts those people again downtown. People living in lofts, living in apartments downtown, but getting back to buying houses and incentives for first-time homeowners, absolutely. And yes, John mentioned second and third time. We're always going to be trying to keep taxes low and making things affordable for the taxpayers here in Hornell.
Thank you.
Okay, and moving, oh, no, Mr. Buckley, did you have a rebuttal on that?
No, we can move along.
All right. Moving on to the next question. For Mr. Lewis first, what would your strategy be in addressing the heroin and opioid crisis locally? What can city government do? And how would you balance emotion with law and order?
Yes, so we're hearing it on the national level, the opioid epidemic, and that comes right to Hornell. And whether you watch the Rochester news or you watch the Elmira news, it hits close to home on the news every day. It is something that everyone's going to deal with, and we deal with it probably in this room through family members, friends. And again, on the small side of that is giving young people things to do to turn them away, to keep them occupied where they're not getting bored and turning to whatever the drug or alcohol is that may lead to opioids. Or we've got an athlete, maybe a star athlete in high school who gets injured, gets on painkillers, and the next thing we know, they're addicted as well. One, I think our police department does a great job. Our fire, who duels as ambulance, they do a great job as well. And I mean, they've been doing this, they're trained, they do this their whole careers. Supporting them, again, locally, but that even shoots off to the hospitals. We're going to have a brand new hospital soon, making sure that's staffed with the proper staff and, trying to get as involved as we can in that process as well. So, yes, the opioid problem is locally, it's nationally as well, and kind of tipping a hat, tipping an ear, I should say, to see what's happening in other places as well. And when it's working, follow suit, and when it's not, turning from that. But always keeping an eye on it and always moving forward.
Mr. Duffy, would you like to rebut that?
It's a big problem, and I think we should start at home. I mean, prescription drugs, that's what it's all about. Now, Steuben County has a pill drop, where they can drop them off. They don't put the camera on you or anything, and I think there's a lot of opioids out there. People started right from home. So we need to convince everybody that whatever is in your house that you're not using, that isn't required by you, you should get rid of it. And you should go to such a pill drop and make sure it's disposed of properly. Not in the river, not in the sewer system, but in a pill drop where it can be disposed of properly. So in the police, they're doing a great job. Okay, Hornell's got an exceptional police department. You're seeing it every day. You're seeing people, neighborhood watch, people are calling in, saying, there's something going on here. They do a surveillance and they find out something is going on. And they take action. I'm proud of these people.
And Mr. Buckley, your rebuttal.
Well, the very first initiative I released during my campaign was my drug initiative, and that basically has the two main components. One is the enforcement aspect, and the other is the education aspect. On the enforcement aspect, our police department does a tremendous job. They do a phenomenal job. They actually have a program in place where if you fall victim to opioid abuse or drug abuse, and you've hit rock bottom and you just want to get help, you can actually go to our police department and they will assist you and get you the help you desperately need. And they'll take you to Loyola Recovery, which deals with addiction services. And they will not arrest you, no questions asked, they just want to get you the help. The people that we really need to go after are the people that profiteer off the backs of these folks. The dealers, the manufacturers, those are the real bad guys in this scenario. I sit on the advisory board for Loyola Recovery, and again, they occupy both third floors of St. James. They have an inpatient and outpatient service. So we have been having those meetings since I've been here for over about 2 years now. I'm also the chairman of the city's Quality of Life Committee. At every Quality of Life Committee, I always have police, fire, and codes there, because those folks are the tip of the spear. They're the boots on the ground. They're the ones that see it first. And they bring that information to us so we can be proactive as a committee, so we can identify what's going on out there and react to it. The other part of the initiative is education.
We got about 5 seconds.
Okay, education. We need to do a better job partnering with the high school and the school district, getting that information to the kids, especially at a younger age.
We want to. I think we're going to try to get one more round of questions and then go to closing. John Buckley gets this one first. Do you feel that HAT, Hornell Area Transit, is an efficient use of city resources? Can you just give us your view on that? We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, so HAT, I mentioned I'm the chairman of the Quality of Life Committee. That encompasses HAT, so I actually run those meetings. HAT does provide a very important service to our constituents here in the city. A lot of people, whether it's health related, whether they just don't have means of transportation, daycare, a lot of summer programs, daycare relies on that. The HAT business is basically $1 million business, and it's federal money that comes in. It goes through the state, gets trickled through the state down to the city level. So it's not, you could say, yes, it's our tax dollars, but it's not the local tax dollars that you may think. So it's really federally subsidized. But HAT's not going anywhere as long as, Sean Hogan has always told me, as long as those federal dollars are there, HAT will be there, and I agree with the mayor. It's a very vital thing that we have here. They give people rides for Coumadin treatments, to St. James. So that's something that we'll always try to find more efficient ways to do things. Whether it's changing routes around, and sometimes going to Alfred and creating other routes where they can bring more people down to the city and do some shopping and spend time here, spend their money here. So we're always looking for ways to improve things and do things better, and we'll keep doing that.
And whoever wants to go first.
Okay. Hey, transportation. That's good. I think it's run by DOT. So, in the bigger cities, they have a lot of public transportation. And in these smaller cities, you don't. Some people cannot afford a car. They need public transportations, and they need to be subsidized for them, just like John was telling them. There's places they have to go, like Bath, New York, a lot of times. Or to Walmart, or to the Wegmans, So, it's not, on the Northeast Corridor, they got Alstroms. They got speed trains to make them go. But here, we've got the HAT system. And it's a needed assistance to the people who are less fortunate. So, I agree with HAT.
And yes, HAT has formerly been a hot button issue. And, it's brought up again today, so still an issue. HAT is important for people who need to get to the store, like Joe said. People have used it for their wedding. Bars use it locally for St. Patrick's Day and pub crawls. The Humane Society Ales for Tales pub crawl. We're talking about using it at the radio station for a shopping trip with about, 20-some people went last year through Covered Wagon, which is no longer right here in Hornell. But hat is vital to this community, and that would be something that, there's no question about it, and I understand as well. That's funded primarily through the state government. So hat continues to be important, will continue to be important, and hopefully everyone in this room, if you haven't been on a hat bus, take a ride. And if not, there are taxis local as well, and boy, Uber now too. So that starts to put a wrinkle in things too. I know hat doesn't really make money, but it needs to be here for, I know, people in this room. I'm lucky to have a car, and I don't need hat, but again, we'll be hopefully using it soon.
We kind of went quick on that. Can we let's just give everyone about a minute and a half. We can put in one more question before the closing statements. Healthcare is the subject. If this debate was held a couple of years ago, probably exactly 2 years ago, when the St. James Mercy Hospital, it was actually a crisis, and didn't know, there was some talk about whether there would even be a hospital going forward. But it's still an important issue. That question's been answered. There will be a hospital going forward, it seems like. But do you think the services planned by St. James to be offered in their new location are sufficient? Are you happy with them? Are they sufficient to meet the needs of this community? And probably aware of generally what the hospital's plan is going forward. If we all just took a shot at that in any order,
Healthcare, that's what it's all about. 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every day. That's a lot of people, and they all need healthcare. As we get older, we find out a few things are happening, such as cancer. Who knows when it's going to strike or when it's not going to strike. The new hospital, of course, we're all disappointed they don't have a maternity ward. I thought maybe Bill Pullman would come here and start a ruckus. But Hornell, if it's going to grow, it should have a maternity ward. We were able to get a surgical surgeon here. The great partnership with the University of Rochester. They're top. We're seeing, as we talk about transportation, that's our helicopters are our link to the University of Rochester. We get stabilized here, and we get shipped to University of Rochester or Buffalo. So, that is a top priority for a community to grow, is healthcare.
Thank you. John Buckley, you want to?
Yeah, you asked, are we happy with what we have as far as the services provided?
I said, did you think it's sufficient? It's sufficient to meet the needs of the community?
The answer is almost. And the one thing we don't have, and Joe mentioned, is maternity. And I've been advocating for maternity since day one, since we lost it, since before we lost it. And I've made the argument in the past, and I'll continue to make it. Dansville and Wellsville have the combined population of Hornell. Each of those cities or towns have maternity. We don't. We have a growing population here in Hornell. We've got building projects on Fairwall. We have building projects adjacent to the airport. We are having an influx of population, and with that influx of population, you're going to have more families, and the more families, the more babies. You shouldn't have to drive down the Dansville Hill at 2:30 in the morning on a snowy February night to deliver your baby. You should be able to do that right here. I'm happy, I'm ecstatic that we're going to have a medical village in a new hospital. I think it's going to be a great attraction. Having that bright, shiny new building, it's going to be a great recruiting tool. To get some younger health professionals, doctors, nurses, technicians. I think that's all great. But the one thing we're missing is maternity, and I have been, and I'll continue to advocate for that.
John Lewis?
Yep, and to start with the hospital, I'm going to be sad for it to move because my identity has always been, where do you live? Next to the hospital. And that's going to be, a 10-minute drive now, even then. I agree. I think everybody in this room probably agrees that maternity is needed and is lacking. I was born at St. James Mercy Hospital, September 12, 1980. Dr. Kelly, cesarean section. Thanks, Mom. But it starts there, and we'll probably maybe end up at a place. My mom works at Hornell Gardens. I was there last night visiting my grandfather with our dog, and it's special that they allow her in, and a special place to be at. I'm friends with the Updikes, and at Updikes Willow Ridge, a beautiful facility. Hopefully if you can be there, you'd be lucky too. And also at Elderwood at Hornell, a newly named facility, and there's good people that work there. I've talked to many a staff member there, from birth to, if you need to be there, healthcare is a hot button issue for me, an important issue for me. Again, growing up with a mother who my whole life has worked at Hornell Gardens, over 40 years, and a father who ran ambulance and helped as babies were born, delivered babies himself. We don't want that to happen if we can get a maternity ward here in Hornell.
Okay, thanks. We're now to our closing statements, and I think we're just going to go in the opposite order. So be Joe Duffy, John Buckley, and John Lewis. And
Sure.
two minutes. But
2 minutes? Sure. Why not? So I would like to abandon the principle of the party and profit to put people first. I want to be the change you see. Okay. Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. We're always in a change doing something. I want to be able to listen to everybody, listen to them mindfully and without judgment. And I want to be the difference. Michael Dell said there's always an opportunity to make a difference. I want to make a difference in Hornell. I want to make it better. And we talked about like the sewer lines, the laterals, the sewer laterals coming from the house. I think they homeowner ownership should be responsible to the curb, just like your water line. Right now it's not. It's all the way to the main sewer line. So I would like to see that looked at and see whether we could do something about it. And I just want to point out something. I agreed with grants. New York State, they contributed $48 billion to Washington, D.C., more than we received in federal spending. So we gave them $1, and they gave us 81 cents back. There's a difference there. We need to talk to our representatives and say we need more of the money that we give Washington, D.C. for more grants so that we could have a better life here at Hornell and make it a difference. Make it good for everybody.
about 10 seconds.
Okay, so the person with a new idea is a crank until the new idea succeeds. That was spoken by Mark Twain. Okay, so these ideas you hear about every day could succeed.
That's it. Thank you. Sorry. Give you a little.
Oh, that's fine. I will say this though, and everybody's going to get to this point because when you turn 50, AARP is going to pester you until you die. But the motto of AARP, and it's been there for 80 years, is to serve, not to be served. And that's their motto.
Thank you. John Buckley?
Well, thank you. I look at constituent service as really customer service, and I fell in love with public service years ago. If you would ask me 15, 20 years ago, would I be doing this? Would I be sitting up here? Would I have ever run for office? I would have said you're nuts. I love it. I love being there for folks. I love being that conduit between the residents and that city department. I love being able to get things done, accomplishments. Whether it's some of the initiatives that I've rolled out during the campaign or some of the accomplishments and achievements I've made during my time in office. Passing the no smoking ban at school bus stops. I sponsored that, I wrote that legislation, got it passed, partnered with the school district, It was just a great piece of legislation. Things like that make a difference. Improving the quality of life for residents. That's what it's really all about. Improving your quality of life. Making the city work for you. Growing the city in the right direction. We've got so many different projects going on right now. And, it's very important. I've got that experience. I've been doing this for a number of years. I mentioned earlier, I did the old-fashioned way. I started on the bottom rung, climbed my way up. I can tell you honestly, sitting here now, I know a lot more now than I did 4 years ago. And 4 years prior to that, I knew a lot more than that. So you're always learning. To jump into the top job is very difficult. Sean Hogan's been here 32 years, and I've said a million times, we've taken him for granted. Regardless of your opinion on Sean, he's been there. He's been that steady hand at the rudder, and it's a big job. It's a multifaceted job. You got to be able to see and deal with what's right in front of you as a mayor, but also see over the horizon and always be prepared in the future. I've got great relationships with our state and federal reps. I think you've seen the fruits of those labors play out, with grants money and pieces of equipment. Look at the fire department. We've got that ladder truck. That was from my relationship with Senator Tom O'Mara. We just deployed that ladder truck successfully 2 times just in the past few weeks. So that's important. Those relationships are important. And I ask for your vote on Election Day. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, I really appreciate everyone in this room tonight, in all honesty. This is what it is all about, coming out and sitting in front of the public or standing in front of the public, because it is going to be every one of you in this room that votes and has a choice, and you will decide who ultimately sits in City Hall and works with over 100 staff members. You'll need someone who can work with those personnel, deal with personnel issues day to day, and look at the big picture. Get things done, working with budgets, working with everything. I feel like I am a strong candidate who can do that. And again, I appreciate everyone in this room. I know there are people in this room who have already decided who they're going to vote for, and it won't be me. That's okay too. I still appreciate you being part of the process tonight. And over these past few months, whether I knocked on your door or someone else's, this has been so rewarding, so exciting. I hope I win. You haven't seen the last of me if I don't. And thank you again. And John, thank you again. Hindsight is 20/20. We all wish we could do things. I think what we were trying to do this week was shine a light. And I hope, in all honesty, if you do win this election, you really do sit back and treat people well. Treat people with respect. Be honest. Be open. Be fair. Be transparent. I'll say that to Joe as well. I wish you both luck as well. I also would appreciate your vote. I'd love it. If I do get that vote and we win this election, I'll make you proud here in Hornell. But thank you for coming tonight, in all honesty, and let's get this done. Together now.
Thank you to all our candidates. Thank you for coming tonight. Really appreciate it.
Okay.